Hello, everyone. Could I ask you to please take your chair? And I know it's a very, very fantastic venue for network and talking to each other, but if we can get going, that'll be amazing so that we get enough time for the panel. Yeah, and so I'll announce that as well. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are having a lot of fun for the CSPC 2025 conference. My name is Tushar Patel. I work at the University of Lethbridge, whose indigenous name is Iniscum, meaning Sacred Buffalo Stone, as a professor and associate dean. I also work as a volunteer for CSPC program committee. We have just a few housekeeping announcements before we get going. So you have these QR codes on your table. You can scan the QR code, go to the app, and you can have simultaneous translations for English and French if you like to do so. We also have the social media hashtags, so I encourage you to use social media hashtags. Today, we have a great panel number 758 in your program, Why No One Believes the Science, Public Trust, Misinformation, and Science Literacy in a Polarized World. This panel is organized by ISET, or Innovation, Science, and Economic Development of Canada. And we have the star moderator with us, Anthony Morgan. Everybody knows Anthony, and we are really excited for Anthony to get us going with the panel. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to see you all. You guys were dancing it up, tearing it up on the dance floor yesterday, so it's a fun group. I'm hoping we can keep that energy going. Yeah, all right. Rearing to go, okay. My name is Anthony Morgan. I am one of the co-hosts of The Nature of Things, and welcome to the panel. The topic is one that's very close to my heart. It's all about polarization, misinformation, trust, science literacy. I'm actually, in addition to hosting The Nature of Things, I'm doing my PhD exploring exactly that topic. So, you know that feeling when you go home for Thanksgiving and everything's going great until you have that uncle that says that thing that makes everybody tense. That's kind of the problem I've spent a lot of my time thinking about. And I think for good reason. We've seen the world has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. Even the last year, there have been some big dramatic changes. People are concerned about levels of trust in our institutions, in science as a process, and the science ecosystem. With the spread of misinformation and the proliferation of AI, people are really concerned about how we can navigate these waters in ways that can effectively allow the public to embrace and endorse and act the best available science. And so I'm hoping we can collect some insights from you today to kind of explore that. It should be a lot of fun. I've been thrilled to be working with this illustrious group of individuals here. They are part of a G7 working group trying to collect sort of best practices around science communication. And we've been working over the last couple of days, but they've been working for a lot longer than that. And the goal really is to sort of emphasize trust building between the science ecosystem and the general public. And so they want to really understand what the best practices from academia, from practitioners, from every part of the science ecosystem, what they are, so they can collect them and take them to the G7. And we're hoping that we can get your help in doing that. And the reason is that we all have blind spots in our thinking that are, by definition, invisible to us. And the best way to find them is by talking to people who see things a little bit differently than we do. And you're going to be hard-pressed anywhere in Canada to find a room full of this many experts on the subject matter, and we want to really make use of that. And so their goal is to kind of surface some of the conventional wisdom about science communication, and then challenge some of the conventional wisdom and see what kinds of new perspectives we can surface and new insights we can surface. And we're asking again for your help in doing so. And so that is their goal. My goal is to try to make that as fun and easy as possible. And to do that, I'm going to borrow from a game format that I've used a number of times for just that purpose. It's been really fun. I call them freestyle socials, and essentially we'll show up somewhere like a student center or a library or a pub. I know people like pubs here. And we'll ask all kinds of unusual questions. Things like, should we erase bad memories? Should we design our kids' DNA? Should we pee in the shower? There's a real range as far as profundity goes. And then we'll tell our audience, you got to pick a side. What does your gut tell you? People are often surprised at what side their friends pick. Oh, you pee in the shower, what's wrong with you? And then we'll put a microphone in the middle of the floor, and each half of the room gets to kind of explain to the other half of the room why you should switch sides. And the only rule for that game is if you hear an idea from the other side that surprises you or makes you laugh, you should switch sides. And the reason is that too many people today, I think we would all agree, are trying to win disagreements. And conversations where the only goal is winning are ruining the world. And so the goal of this game really is to help us remember that we can laugh and learn instead. And so obviously we can't do that exactly the way that we do it in a normal setting. You guys are all sitting at your tables. So we've come up with some strategies to make that easier for you. Among them is this. Actually, do you want to try it out? Can you hold on to that? Yeah. Among them is this little box here. It's called a catch box. So we are still going to make you. We're going to ask you all kinds of weird two-sided questions, and we are still going to have you pick sides. And I guess we'll start with a kind of a practice question. So can we bring that up on the screens now? I'm going to ask you a practice question, and just so we can get the mechanics of the game down. And the practice question is this: Are we in trouble? We'll see if that updates. Should update. So the question, we'll see if my technology plays along with me today. Ideally, you're going to get the chance to kind of scan that QR code, and we'll be able to see your responses in real time. If the technology doesn't play along with us today, then we'll figure out an alternative. But the question is, are we screwed, basically, is what we wanted to ask. Because we're seeing some serious backsliding in terms of science policy and support for science. And when I spend time on university campuses, there are a lot of people who are quite despairing and not very enthusiastic about the options in front of us. And I want to know if you guys feel the same way. So let's try that one more time. And so we'll do it this way. How many people, we'll just do it by show of hands for now, and we'll see if that updates in a minute. How many people feel as though, yes, we are screwed, by show of hands, or make some noise if you feel that way? Okay, a lot of people feeling like we're screwed. And now, how many people feel like maybe not so much? Make some noise and, okay. So most people are optimistic that we are not screwed. That's really great news. And we'd like to spend, a lot of this panel will be very interactive. We'd like to hear from you about that, why. So Nick, if you can show people how that works, you're just gonna, this is something called a catch box. And you can just speak right into the top of that. Just say hello. Testing. And then we're gonna bring up the audio. Go ahead. Try that one more time.
Testing.
There we
go.
So we thought it would be really fun to try this with, we got this basically beach ball kind of thing that we're going to toss into the audience, and you guys are going to get the chance to, Lee, you got good hands? There you go. Super lightweight. And I'd love to hear from you guys why, if you say that we are not screwed, why you think we're not screwed. And if you say we are screwed, we'd love to hear that too. You can just kind of raise your hand and we'll throw the beach ball over to you, and we'd love to hear from you just so you guys can get the mechanic of the game. So Lee, did you have a feeling, yes, no, we're screwed or we're not screwed?
I was kind of thinking we're screwed.
We're kind of screwed? Okay, and why is that?
We don't listen to each other.
That's right, yeah, there's not a lot of listening. Well, hopefully we're seeing a bit of change there for that today. Anybody else want to share a thought on why we should be enthusiastic? Yeah, hand over there. You can just toss it.
So I'm very optimistic, and part of it is because I'm a university professor and I work with a lot of young people, and they're amazing and they're creative and they have a ton of energy, and it makes me really optimistic.
Right. That's a very good reason to, yeah, go ahead.
I will just dovetail on that and say I'm a mom, and my kids, I see the world through their eyes sometimes. They're very young, and I'm very optimistic with the way that they're growing and learning.
We believe the children are the future. I love it. So I think you guys are getting sort of the mechanic of it, and so I want to get into some of the meat of the questions, because as I said, we're trying to collect some insights about conventional wisdom in science communication. I think the first question we're going to ask is, I'll set the stage for it. In trying to understand why we may or may not be screwed, people often point to a particular driver and accelerator of polarization and misinformation. The idea of echo chambers is probably the most common explanation. And we want to unpack whether or not echo chambers are really the problem that we think they are. And so I'm going to ask you, we'll do show of hands again. How many people feel like echo chambers really are the problem, is the thing that is driving misinformation, polarization, all of the challenges that the science ecosystem is seeing? Make some noise, put some hands up. Yeah, make some noise, okay. So it's seeming like maybe around 50%. And then how many people feel like not so much? Okay, so I'd love to hear from either side why yes or why no, and then we're gonna come to we'll take a couple of minutes to hear from you, and we're gonna come to our illustrious panel to really explore that in some more depth. So if you have a thought on that, please just feel free to put up your hand. Yep.
I don't believe that there's enough spaces where people who disagree with each other can actually come together and speak about it.
Interesting. Okay, and so, well, echo chambers meaning that you're not hearing from the other side, so you're not physically getting together, or do you mean sort of online spaces as well?
Both. I mean, online it's nearly impossible with algorithms. It just feeds you like a biased opinion of what you already agree with. But then I think because the online world has grown so much, we're also encouraged less to be in person with each other, where there could be less influence from the algorithm. Fair enough, fair enough. Anybody else want to contribute to that? We also do have our illustrious panel here to help out with this. So we've got some experts in, we've got Mario, who is, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Mario, and tell us a little bit about what your background is?
Sure, can do that. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm from the European Commission, meaning I live in Belgium. So it was long travel here, and I'm happy to be in Canada again and to speak on this panel. And I would say, I think the lady in the audience who said this is already right in this direction. So we know from the evidence that echo chambers are real. Meaning, but the terminology is a little bit misleading sometimes. It doesn't mean that you only hear from a group of people around you or in this room, but it means that you hear stuff that is aligned with what you already believe in. And it can be from even people from the other side completely, if they say something that aligns with what you say. And this is really a problem, and there's recent research that shows that this is across multiple platforms, so it's not the fault of one specific tech bro or whatever you want to call them, but it's across the platforms, but specifically it's tied to the business model. And it's tied to the business model when it's all about engagement. When they try to get you as long and as most engaged on a platform because they want to sell advertising, that's then when they design algorithms that show you only what's kind of either pleases you or enrages you, because that gets you even more on. And this is really important to understand. And there's a more recent nuance to this. It's not only echo chambers on the big platforms, it's echo platforms nowadays, where everyone moves to different spaces, whether it be, some people on X who are more right-leaning, some people on Blue Sky who are more left-leaning, and then more other platforms where we increasingly cannot even see each other anymore. And it's not even necessarily only the fault of the algorithm anymore. So yes, it's true.
Okay, so from your perspective, algorithms, our echo chambers really are the problem. Again, if you have any thoughts as we go along, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. For the first part, we'll prioritize sort of audience feedback, because we do genuinely want to collect insights from you, but we'll fill in the spaces with our experts here. I see a hand here, so where's our, can we throw the box over that way? Good luck, just heads up then. Everybody's eyes up, okay? It's lightweight, just so you know. There you go. Oh, good hands. All right. Okay. Some teamwork there.
I think my thoughts are along what Lee said, the listening part, but also recognizing that emotions are the driving force to a lot of our reactions. So for me, echo chambers are just the symptom, the result, the consequence, but I think emotions are really the driving force, and we're not focusing enough on that, especially us as scientists.
Right, so emotion is, well, I mean, certainly the data suggests that outrage is the thing that spreads information most rapidly, so echo chambers really aren't the problem, it's emotion then. Nick, I know that you're an expert in the subject matter as well. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about sort of what brings you to the G7 group and then your perspective on this question?
Sure, thank you. So I'm Nick. I work in the Government of Canada on a little team called the Impact and Innovation Unit inside of the Privy Council office. And I lead a big program of empirical work, a study we call the Trust, Information, and Digital Ecosystem Study, which has sampled over 20,000 Canadians in the last few years, looking at the intersections of trust in institutions and mis and disinformation and Canada's information ecosystems, trying to measure all that. So I'm on team echo chambers are real and are a problem. I don't know about the problem, but are a problem for sure.
Okay.
And maybe I'll give you a little bit of Canadian data to unpack why I think that's so. Two pieces. Number one, we have been for years now asking people how often they visit each major social media platform. Do you visit never, monthly, weekly, et cetera, et cetera? And now we have a huge statistical model, and you can actually predict statistically quite well people's levels of belief in scientific mis and disinformation about climate or COVID or public health or other topics based on the amount of time spent on different platforms. And the platforms are not all the same. I won't get into the weeds. You can probably take a guess about which platforms are linked to more belief in misinformation and which are linked to less. But the point is that holds even when you control for people's age and gender and education. So in some sense, platforms are made of people, but we all sort of become the platforms that we spend time on, and we all sort of become the views and the people that we surround ourselves with. And many of us are on these platforms hours every day, including me, some day, on bad days. The other piece, the last piece, and then I'll wrap it up, is an idea that we and others call the false consensus effect. And I think this might be one outcome of echo chambers. And the false consensus effect, the way that we measure it, is a finding where the more that people believe scientific misinformation, measurably, like the more false claims that people are confident are true about scientific issues, the more dramatically they tend to overestimate how many other people feel the same way. So the point is that misinformation is social, belief is social. We're not all just like little philosophers walking around saying, that's true, that's false, this is the logic for this. Our beliefs become a product of the social norms that we see and what gets normalized in different communities. I think we're all vulnerable to this. And I think that is one way that, perhaps one product of echo chambers.
So, Mario, please, sure, yeah.
Just because this is an extremely important fact that was mentioned by Nick, and I realized I didn't even say what I do. I said that where I come from, but I'm a behavioral scientist as well, working in the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, so meaning I'm a researcher or knowledge broker in the unit that does research on democracy and evidence-informed policymaking, which brings me also to be part of the G7 working group on science communication, because it's all about how people understand what we put out there. What is the evidence? Do they even read, understand evidence, etc.? But more to the point, what you said, the false consensus effect is even stronger now, and there's emerging evidence for politicians, because politicians are a lot on these platforms as well, as we know, and we see emerging, at least on some topics, that they're getting worse in understanding what their own electorate wants. So, for example, there's evidence from the UK and Belgium where we see that when you ask them, okay, how much do your voters, the people you represent, support more action on climate change? There's a 20% gap by now between what they think people are willing and what they're actually willing, because they're actually willing to do much more. And I think this is one of the underappreciated facts, that it's really also politicians who get increasingly wrong picture of their own voters.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So there's really a big perception gap. Marianne, I see your expression there. Said, it looked as though you had a thing to share there. If not,
I can't help it.
Okay, please.
Because now I have a question.
Sure, ask away.
Maybe doesn't align with your yes, no, but how do we break through these echo chambers? And it's a question that we struggle with a lot. So I'm Marianne Mader. I'm the CEO of the Canadian Association of Science Centers. So this is one of the largest science public engagement networks in Canada. And so in a way, I come from a different lens, not through the research lens, through maybe a representation of kind of practitioner organizations. We also run an initiative that tackles online science misinformation, and that one's called Science Up First. And we often get asked, you know, how are you reaching the conspiracy theorists? How are you, breaking through these echo chambers, and we know our audience, our science-engaged audiences. We're on all the different social media platforms if you look up Science at First. So we know they're science-engaged. That is a specific audience. And we say, you know what? We're probably not reaching. They're not coming to Science at First. But we recognize that the people who are have their own ecosystems and network and spheres of influence. And so they have family members who may be in that kind of conspiracy theory group. Right. And so we acknowledge that we're not just tackling misinformation, we're also, sharing how to have difficult conversations. And so those folks can be part of the kind of breaking out of an echo chamber.
Right.
Because we've kind of looked at how people navigate information online. And I mean, how do you navigate information online?
So you're touching on a question that I definitely want to come to, which is, are there some people who we should just give up on? Because there are many people, I think many of us have experienced sort of over the holidays, like there's an uncle or two or an aunt who are like, yeah, that person maybe we give up on. We're going to come back to that for sure. I want to push a little bit more on this idea though of the echo chamber as the sort of source of the problem, only because I think the goal for me is to try to poke holes in some of these ideas and really stress test them to the degree that we can. I'm familiar with some work by a researcher, Chris Bale, who he tried to test this idea of the echo chamber empirically. So essentially, he got a bunch of people who were very strongly partisan on the left and the right on Twitter, and then he paid them to follow bots from the other side that were retweeting ideas from the other side. He had a bunch of tests to make sure that people were actually listening to the content that they were sharing. And if the echo chamber theory is correct, and there's a lot of evidence, obviously, to suggest that it is, then what we should see as people spend more time listening to these bots is that they should become less polarized across time. And so when he measured at the end of a month of them following these bots, what he found is not that they were less polarized, they were more polarized, which was really counterintuitive. And so the conclusion that he kind of came to was the idea that, well, it's sort of in line with a lot of our lived experience on Twitter, right? The reason that Twitter is something of a dumpster fire in many people's experience is not that we're encountering nothing but lovely ideas that we really enjoy hearing. It's that we're encountering nothing but the worst of the other side. And so his theory, anyways, is that we're not really in an echo chamber so much as we're in a trigger bubble, that's a term by another researcher. But we're encountering the worst of the other side, and we're really only building sort of monsters in our minds of what the other side might represent. And so I'm off. Yeah, I see a hand up. Yeah, feel free. That's really the point, is to surface the places where we're not so sure what's going on and figure out. There you go.
All right, what if the problem is the social media? I think what we're trying to do is, essentially, you're trying to fight in a space where you can't win. It's bots, it's algorithms, it's capitalism, whatever that is. Like, part of me actually thinks, it's the wrong question, which is how do we fight disinformation in a space where disinformation is the currency? So honestly, we had a channel, I'm at U of T, we just stopped being on Twitter. There's no point in being in a place where the dialogue isn't the dialogue. So echo chambers and all these things are somewhat artificial because the social media is there to create a very particular kind of way of transmitting information. So my controversial question would be, like, why don't we advocate instead for stopping certain communities from being on social media, children, vulnerable people, et cetera?
Interesting. Yeah, that is a fascinating one. So the idea would be to keep certain groups off of social media before they're ready to, I can imagine that would be...
Like it's the problem. So
Right.
If the problem is vaccine hesitancy or distrust of science, go to the source.
Right. Very interesting idea. We might add that one on to the end of the list, actually. I've got a list of questions we're going to go through, but that's a really fascinating one. I think I want to pick up on the broader theme, though, that's the idea that social media, certainly, whether or not echo chambers are the core of why social media seems to be tricky, many people would agree that one way or another, social media is a tricky place to spend some time. And, but not uniformly, because certainly, as Marianne can attest to, there are multiple examples of really outstanding science communicators able to reach the public at scale and influence communities in large ways. So I guess the next question I would want to ask is social media a net positive for science communication? And so if you feel like the answer is yes, make some noise. Let's hear you. I want to see get a sense of where you guys are at. Yep, okay. Run it up to the box, okay. So most people, that was pretty quiet. That was quite dismal. How many people feel like the social media is net negative then? Make some noise. Wow, interesting. Okay, take it away.
Anthony? Yeah, so I think this actually comes down to neuroscience. I think the social media has replaced smoking as the addiction. It's an addiction. And we have these devices which are very addictive for young people. I see kids in strollers, they're not even 1 year old, watching some, dinosaur or something. It's cool, I guess. But I think it's a new addiction, and it's, smoking used to be the addiction, and we were actually told that smoking was not only not harmful, but it was good for you. And then we found out, well, maybe the experts said, maybe smoking is not so good for you, it is harmful. But I was told for years, and this is the marketing thing that you talked about earlier, that there's a business model there, a very powerful one, lobby, that said that was okay. And now I don't trust those industries that are telling me to buy these things, because smoking is a big example. And then the experts telling me, wait a minute, you should not be smoking because it's harmful for me. But wait, is that true or not true? So again, there's a bit of confusion there. So I really think it's down to your area, your old area, neuroscience, it's addictions, and social media is the new addiction.
Right, just cannot quit. Okay, well, I see a couple of hands coming up right away, so go ahead. Can we throw the box over to the gentleman over here? Thank you, good catch.
Following in the same vein, there was a comedian once who explained the different effect of recreational drug, and he said, cocaine just make you more of what you already are. And the punchline was, well, what if you're an asshole?
Right.
And I think that's a little bit what social media does. It's an amplifier. I'm sure there were echo chambers of a sort before. Maybe it was the various conventions of the political parties or the various newspapers to which you subscribe, be they right-leaning or left-leaning, but social media is like those on crack. It just amplifies. So it may not be the root problem, but it's the catalyzer that make the chemical reaction happen.
Certainly.
And so I don't know how one goes about it, but I'm not much on social media.
We got to do something, Learn something from what we did with maybe Philip Morris then. It sounds like a lot of people not so excited about social media, but it wasn't uniform. There were some people who were a fan who felt like it might be, at least it might have something redeeming about it. I'd love to hear from some of those people. I mean, anytime we can hear an idea that we didn't expect means there's an opportunity to learn something, so good catch. That was a good.
Yeah, I think the root of the problem, in my opinion, is not social media as much as it is the faith that the youth especially put into what they see on social media. So I think there's like a miseducation in discerning like what's entertainment and what's actually science and what's actually communicating achievements.
Right.
I think I think that's the source of everything, and I think anything that comes as entertaining is usually something that pulls on emotional strings, which is what someone else said. So I think usually that's stuff that's rage bait, and usually that's what rings true when all of the other science communication that a lot of the people here do kind of give up on because it doesn't get to the audience, because it doesn't push through the cloud of the rage bait that's out there.
Right. So young people are seeing the Pope in a big puffy jacket, thinking that's real, and they're not really being critical about. So it's digital literacy skills. I saw another hand over here behind you. I see a lot more hands coming up.
Hi. I'm sorry for that. I am a master's student at University of Montreal, so I am the youth. Hello.
Oh, there they are. I didn't know. Okay, we were looking for you. There you
Do
are.
I have other Gen Z in the place, please? I'm not alone. So I am not an acro to social media. I just want to start with that right away. And I believe that scientists should be more on social media, not because I'm in love with social media and I'm young. It's just because I think that we all believe in the fact that we're supposed to be where the people are. And the people right now, they are on social media. And when I say we should go on social media and be there, I'm not saying we should all get a fight with people. I'm just saying just be there. Just share fun fact with your community on social media. I have a podcast. I'm not even looking at how many people are looking at my podcast. I don't care. I'm just giving the information, and in some way it's gonna get to the people who wants to hear it. And sometimes it's just going to be a fun fact. Sometimes it's just going to have like a guest with me sharing about science stuff, how we got into science, and also it also break the fact, not just breaking the science to people and vulgarizing it, but also break this idea that science is only for the elite people. This idea that people think that science is too hard, that nobody understands it, that is false. We all cried once in one of our classes. I'm pretty sure everybody can relate to that.
I don't know.
We never learn everything at the first try, and I think that people don't understand that. They believe we are higher than them, and that's why they don't want to listen to us. But if we go where the people are, they're going to listen to us.
That really resonates, the idea that we're making. Yeah, all right. That's where we're making social media at least can make science communication feel more informal and accessible to people then. So go ahead.
I just kind of wanted to echo that. I'm a PhD student too, so I'm also part of the youth here.
Oh, more youths? There's so many of you guys.
And I just wanted to kind of echo what you were saying, that we should kind of put more of a focus during like science education on how to make science more accessible and explain your research to the general public. There's a lot of classes you take that'll tell you how to talk to people in your field, but then when you try and go and present it to I've tried presenting it to my parents, and that's a really hard thing to do when they don't understand anything about my research. So I feel like just making an effort in the education to get your communication skills to a place where you can talk to the general public about your research is a great place to start with science students.
Sorry, more hands. I love that, and I'm really glad to see all the youths here. I see more hands. I'm aware of the time, and we've got 6 questions we're going to get through. I'm going to come to one more person on this question who hasn't had a chance yet, and then we'll come to maybe Marianne a little bit on this one, and then we'll go to our next question. So, where's the box? Can we throw it to somebody who hasn't had a turnover this way? So glad you guys are all so keen to participate. This is awesome.
Hi, I'm a PhD candidate at UBC, so I'm also a youth.
They're infiltrating us. Next year it's going to be only youths.
One of the things I think about when I'm on social media recently is what we can learn from youth who are organizing in the policy space. Recently in BC, the BC Greens Party elected Emily Lowen, who is 24 years old, as their party leader. Wow. We also saw that Gen Z on Discord in Nepal organized to overthrow their government and elect a new leader. So social media is a fantastic space when used correctly for unifying people, including for scientists. And I think so much of our approach has been about giving people information, but that's no longer necessarily effective because anyone can Google, anyone can ChatGPT anything. And so it's not a lack of information at all. I think we just need to really understand how to build a movement and how to build a community from youth leaders who've already done so.
That's quite inspiring. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Marianne or Nick, I don't know if you want to chime in on this one in particular, or maybe any of our other panelists as well, feel free. Don't be shy.
I was going to throw to Barbara.
Barbara? Yeah,
Okay.
Barbara. Oh, Barbara, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you came to the G7 group.
Hi. First of all, who needs a panel if you have such an audience?
Right.
Right? So my name is Barbara Olfe-Kreutlein. I'm coming from Germany. As you can see on the screen, I'm a senior scientific advisor at the German Aerospace Center, more specific in the Center of Expertise for Science Communication. And it's my very great pleasure to be here to represent the co-chair of the G7 Working Group on Science Communication. So thanks for having me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on that panel. Quite impressive statements that we have heard so far. And I wanted to comment also on the term of empowerment, because in my opinion that the discussion that we just had about social media and how they can really be damaging, it's also one important goal of science communication, to enable people actually to handle science. So we will not be able to turn back time and to avoid social media, so we should probably concentrate on how we can make them most useful for science communication. And so, in my opinion, we should really define our perception of what trust is, and trust must not be confused with compliance or with obedience, or that sort of notion which comes from this deficit model, which we all know is outdated and really only is considered ineffective and leads to passivity and also to a feeling of being powerless. So if we want science communication to work, we should concentrate on communicating it so it can be understood, which includes building up trust, building up competencies, including uncertainties also in what we are communicating as institutions, communicating processes, and so really like bring people on board and make them feel in the know how to handle information on science.
I really love that. I want to pick up on that thread. The idea of building trust, and facts are important, but we want to build trust. Anton, this is one where you've been our secret. You've been hanging out here on the panel for a while, kind of secretly, and people have been wondering, like, who is this guy? He's doing something important. I know he is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, and then I'll ask my question following that.
Sure, I'm Anton Holland. I'm the CEO of a science communication company called NEVA. So we work on behalf of organizations to help with their, to be more effective at doing science communication, to engage, to help break through some of the issues that they're having with reaching people on a lot of these types of issues.
So what I want to ask you, and really all of our panelists and the room is, considering the way that social media or many other sort of information, many of the landscapes in the information landscape are structured, social media in particular, doesn't seem to be constructed for the purposes of sharing facts, of sharing propositions, right? The business model that they use is to collect information about our identities, and so they really want us to express as much as we can about our identities in ways that are likely to foment conflict, because that's what maintains the highest engagement on these platforms. So when you're communicating with, there's going to be different groups that you're communicating with. It's not always the public. But when you're communicating, should we be focusing as heavily as we have historically on facts, or should we be de-emphasizing facts and focusing on something else, like identity, for instance, when we're trying to communicate with the general public? I'll start with you, and then I'll come to the public as well.
Yeah, well, of course, facts are important, but facts don't shape behavior. They don't shape the way people react to things. So what we need to do is we need to provide some relevance around those facts. We need to tie that into the things that matter to people. A lot of these types of things, we really have to know what type of audience that we're dealing with, right? One solution is not going to fit every group. So once you understand what those issues are, you can then, craft an approach that, yes, builds on the facts, but finds a way to make that relevant and resonate with people.
Right, okay. And what does that look like in your work? We were chatting at the bar the other day about some of the work you were doing with the out east in Canada.
Yeah, so for example, we once did a State of the Atlantic Ocean report, right? And so and it was based on like a huge amount of monitoring information. But we were thinking of, if we're trying to reach Canadians, how are we going to characterize that audience, right? It's not a monolith, right? There are people who are more or less engaged with science and with facts, and it's in fact a spectrum, right? So you have to look along the entire spectrum and see how you can reach those people. So we looked at who we were dealing with. We kind of split things up into people who were waders, swimmers, or divers in this particular case. So people who were waders were folks who would look for little info bites on social media, infographics, that type of thing, that that was enough to engage them. The swimmers were people who were really looking at a tool that would interpret the scientific information in a way that was much more plain language, that sort of connected with their lived experience and that sort of thing. And of course, the divers were people who were hardcore and would go into everything. So we could craft a strategy that would reach all of those people, and then develop all of the different types of media and things that would reach them and help make that successful.
So that works really well when you've got a group that already wants your information. One of the problems that science communicators are facing in the sort of online landscape is, I'll give you an example. For the CBC, for T-Not 101, we just released a YouTube series, and the pieces of content that we produced that were the most effective, that had the most reach, they were almost uniformly reaching very far because there was a lot of conflict in the comment section about them. So we did a piece about walking whales, how whales originally evolved to come out of the water onto land and then went back into the water, lost their legs. And there were some folks in our comment section who were not so sold on the concept of evolution. And that firestorm in the comment section is what made sure that it was seen by more viewers than any of our content. So I guess to sharpen the question that I want to ask you and ask the room is, as science communicators trying to reach a public, should we be leaning into conflict as a tool for getting attention for the subject that we're interested in? How many people, make some noise if you feel like the answer is yes, or raise your hand. How many people feel like yes, lean into a little bit of conflict? Very few. Okay, some people. How many people feel like, no, that's not the right approach, we should lean away from conflict? Make some noise. Okay. So let's unpack this, because part of my concern would be that if you don't do that, then nobody's going to see what we're doing. Maybe we can understand why we should be doing that anyways. So hands, anybody wanna? Yep, I see a couple at least. So where's our box? Can we? All right, perfect.
So I think approaching it from a stance of conflict as the word is the wrong approach, because it has a very negative connotation to it. And I think instead we should approach from a place of learning and willingness to fail and learn from our mistakes. Because too often when we're talking about the facts of something, or we're talking about conspiracy theorists, it's pointing at the other side and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you believe that.
Right.
That's so wrong, you're an idiot. And I think that is a non-starter. And I think first and foremost, we should be creating space to fail, to make mistakes, and then to learn and grow from those mistakes. And that's something that social media doesn't necessarily encourage at the moment.
Right.
So how we address that, I'm not quite sure.
Right, fair enough. Well, I think it's obviously something that's going to resonate deeply with a room full of scientists. So that's quite nice to hear. But I see some hands up over. That's going to be a long throw. We might have to traipse over a little bit. I guess in the meantime, I'd open it up to maybe Mario at the end, or Barbara. Would you care to chime in on this one? Is there value in leaning into spaces where conflict already exists? Not necessarily that we're fomenting it, but acknowledging it and trying to speak in those spaces?
In my opinion, the creation of a common ground is really essential to have a meaningful societal dialogue. So I would rather go for the option not to lean into conflict, meaning not to avoid conflict at all costs, because obviously there's disagreement and conflicts, but rather concentrate on common ground on a basis for future communication.
Okay.
Very good. So I think I agree very much. Just to say, when there's conflict, that means that there are opposites, not only thoughts and ideas and beliefs, but also opposite emotions. Something that's valuable and important to people, such that they feel they need to engage with it. So while I would also completely agree, we as either the government or science communicators shouldn't lean into it, we should see this as a signal that there's a demand for more information, clarification, content on this. And that's important then for what we do with this. So can we provide more information, better ways to deal with this? For example, the engagement model means people like entertainment. So can we create a version of our information in that context that does allow a different way to engage with it? So that would be my...
Right, so using the signal of conflict as an indicator that, all right, the public wants something here, but we don't have to lean in with conflict, we can lean in with humor and levity. Nicholas, and then I think there were some people in the audience as well, so Nicholas, go ahead.
Sure. I think leaning into conflict is an interesting frame. I would suggest you didn't lean into conflict. You could have said evolution is not real, and that would have triggered a lot of...
I can imagine.
That would be leaning in.
Yeah.
You got some for free by triggering people. But, I agree with Barbara and Mario. I think, first of all, I saw some survey findings recently from the UK, I think. When you ask people, they say that they would love online platforms that are fact-based and not full of polarization and animus. That's what they say they want. What should we make of that? I don't know, because behavior tells a different story. But that's what people say they want. And I think that good science communication, maybe this is idealistic, but I think when done well, can pierce through conflict and can have the result of sort of like popping the bubble, of political animus and us versus them ideology. One quick example, we ran an experiment on vaccine communications during COVID. Specifically, vaccine communications on Twitter. It was Twitter at the time, not X. And this is a topic that is full of conflict and identity and bad feelings, right?
Yeah.
And we ran an experiment specifically on a sample of 2,000 unvaccinated Canadians who I think many science communicators had sort of written off as like, we're not going to reach them. And we tested the government's status quo Twitter vaccine communication approach, which said like get vaccinated, the risks outweigh the benefits, et cetera. We tested that status quo message that was actually out there against alternative messages using this idea called operational transparency, which is sort of inviting people into the process of science, very glass walls approach, rather than telling people what to do or telling people that the risks outweigh the benefits or that they should just get vaccinated. The idea was just lay out, here are the risks, here are the benefits, make up your own mind. Here are all the vaccines that were tested and how they got knocked off at different points, and we wound up with the final few. Just pure process of science, not telling people what to do. And we found that actually increased vaccine intentions by about 9%, which if it scaled up would be a big deal. Who knows if it would generalize at scale. And I think that's one way that science actually can pierce through conflict with, but specifically if we sort of invite people in rather than maybe finger wag or lean in on identity or us versus them.
So would the idea be then that you find these places where conflict is boiling online and then go in and just kind of drop a little nugget and say like, this is the process we went through, so make of it what you will, kind of thing? That's the idea?
Yes.
I love that.
Drop a little nugget.
I love that. Drop a little nugget, okay. I know there were some hands over here, and I think the box made it over finally, but I don't know where that went.
It did. The box did make it over here.
Who's saying that? Is that a ghost?
No, it's me. It's right
Oh, okay, hello.
So I think one way to find common ground when communicating facts is to communicate facts via what I would call an experience share. So to give this very real example, when I'm trying to communicate a fact to my partner that he might not want to hear, but it would benefit his health, I would say something like, when I exercise regularly, it puts me in a better mood. And I would give examples maybe specifically about how it puts me in a better mood. And I think when we approach a fact by giving our experience with that information, I feel like it makes people less inclined to just maybe automatically disagree with you, because there's a personal aspect to it, and I think it opens up to a little bit more discourse, because sometimes I feel like conflict arises simply because someone's experience with that fact might be totally different from your experience with that fact, or maybe they just have experienced an alternate reality. But I think if you come from communicating facts via experience, might be a better way to find common ground.
I love that. Right. Yeah, I can attest to the idea that coming right at your spouse with a reason that they're wrong is not effective. Do not recommend. I saw there was one more. I saw there are several hands over there. Let's get somebody who hasn't had a chance to speak, hopefully.
So I'm gonna. I'll send it that way in a minute. But I'm going back in is experience, been doing science type communication for a long time in various forums. If you lean into the conflict, you actually will increase the credibility of the other side, because it was felt, oh, someone really credible is saying I have to respond to this one. I like the better approach of saying, don't tell them what to do, give them more facts, give them more come back in, and allow for a dialogue. So it's a different approach of this one. Don't ignore the conflict, but you're not leaning into the conflict. You're trying to step back in. Like, there's a tendency in science is, well, you just don't understand, right? Well, you got to back away with this one. People, you know, they have the ability to understand. This whole discussion on AI is, it's actually is possible to explain how an AI model works. So let's try it and let people figure out, then they can figure out the risks themselves. So don't tell them what it is, but also be very clear when there is a scientific consensus. And that's, I think the science community is poor on that one. You know, there's a sense on climate change that there isn't a scientific consensus because people are discussing uncertainties. Uncertainties is the slope of the graph, not whether the line is going up. And we got to make sure that we're communicating the basic science and not being overly concerned about uncertainties.
So what I think I'm hearing then is the idea, I mean, it seems like collectively we're kind of arriving at this idea, or maybe you guys were already there, that we don't want to lean into conflict in the sense that we're going to try to point out why the other side is incorrect, but rather maybe use the conflict as a signal to say, well, there's a productive conversation to be had here where we're not sort of trying to take down people's ideas. There was one more hand, but I want to pick up on this idea of uncertainty. So we'll come to you just before we hop onto that question. There was, do you still have the box? Oh, there you go. Perfect.
The box. Thank you. Hi, I'm Marie. I'm a communication officer at the MNI in McGill. So everything you're saying resonates a lot with me. What I feel like about using conflict as a way to reach these people, I have doubts about it working because I feel like when some people lean into these opinions, like for example, anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, it's not just about beliefs, it's about like them really finding a community. And it's like this very strong, tight-knit community. It's like the us versus them. We know, we have the truth, they don't. Our eyes are open, their eyes are closed. And I feel like going into conflict is really a way to sort of like almost reinforce their beliefs. Whereas if we can find a way to reach out to them and like, okay, walk me through it, explain to me exactly why you believe that, and sort of deconstruct this together, would be a great way to really understand and sort of like bring them back to
right.
I get more scientific beliefs, but it is really hard to do it at large scale.
It is quite tricky to do that at large scale, which is, I guess, also brings me to the next question that I wanted to ask, because what I hear you saying is leaning into curiosity and sort of like compassion are really effective, and that resonates with my experience. If there's one thing I've learned, it's before anybody cares what you believe, they must believe that you care. The problem is when we're trying to communicate at scale, as we had to do during something like a global pandemic, leaning into curiosity and trying to walk through the process of all of the science of how an mRNA vaccine is, as we're figuring out how those things works and building the plane as we're flying it, can be quite tricky. And so there's frequently uncertainty in science as we're doing science. And so the next question I want to ask is, should we communicate that uncertainty, in particular during things like emergencies where we're really, like every decision can have life and death implications. So I want to get a poll of the room. Should we communicate uncertainty? How many people are, yeah, we should be doing that, make some noise? And okay, most people are yes. How many people say, no, we should not, make some noise or raise their hands? Okay, relatively few. I want to make sure that we're also making a point to listen to some of the minority perspectives, because anytime there's a difference of opinion, there's an opportunity to hear an idea you might not have had. So I'd really encourage the people in the minority to feel free to share. But I'll start by asking, I guess we'll start with you, Anton. Oh, there's some hands over here? Perfect, okay. The box is going to take a while to get there. So while it's traveling, I'll ask Anton, do you think we should...
Yeah, well, I think what we're really talking about when we're talking about communicating uncertainty is trust, right? And so, from our lived experience with doing hundreds of projects, right, we see whether it's health, whether it's climate, whether it's risk communication that we're dealing with, that communicating uncertainty is essential. If by communicating uncertainty, we see that actually enhances perceptions of transparency and honesty.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of clients who are often concerned that, well, if we're communicating about how uncertain we are about things, that people will think that we don't know what we're doing. But we find that unrecognized uncertainty is penalized way more than recognized uncertainty. So you have to take that chance. There is a good way to communicate about uncertainty, and there's a bad way.
Right.
Right. And so when you are talking about complex uncertainty and you're using complex terms, or you're using say numerical probabilities, those are types of things that people have a really hard time dealing with. So you need to translate that kind of information to something that people can understand, right? So if you're talking about, say, we're 60 to 80% confident that a storm is going to make landfall on Friday. We'll follow that up with some actionable advice, right? So the second part of that would be, so we're advising all coastal residents to prepare now, right? So you're talking about the uncertainty, but you're also giving them a way to get ready for what's coming down the pipe.
Right. Okay. So it's yes, and then there's a little asterisk on that. I suspect that the mic has made its way over to the. Go ahead.
It's over here, on the other side of the room. I'm gonna stand. Hi, everybody. My name is Eden Hennessy, and I am a social scientist, social psychologist. And I actually want to kind of paradigm shift this entire panel, such that I think that in these kinds of spaces, what I'd really love to see people doing is, I would encourage all of us to be looking at the research and the science, and we've heard some of that data, but we know that we have incredible social scientists who are doing work on things like behavioral nudging. We have our own behavioral insights team within our government. I think it's really critical that we look to the data and really look to the data to guide what we're doing in terms of counteracting mis and disinformation, rather than, sharing our opinions is one thing, but it also replicates another process where we're platforming opinions, the same ways in which many of the conversations we deeply critique do. And so I would encourage us, as scientists, to center our conversations around the data always, to determine our actions as the next steps. And I want to pass this over, while we have this, to my colleague Imogen, who we both, honestly, we have this conversation all the time of the marriage and the relationship between social science and natural and physical science, and how that relationship must be strengthened through the sharing of data. Because the amount of times I sit in rooms with folks who are in physics, in engineering, and I'm not an expert in physics or engineering. Those folks often are not experts in behavioral science. And so I think we all have to respect each other's expertise and share that information with the recognition that we are on a similar mission. Wouldn't you agree, my colleague?
Wonderful, wonderful.
So I'm Imogen Coe from Toronto Metropolitan University, and I represent the old. And I would just...
We got the spectrum, that's great.
And I think we need to take into account that a vast majority of the older demographic is on social media. So we spend a lot of time focusing on youth. And if you want to find out the data and more research on who is on social media in Canada, there is a fantastic research center called the Social Media Lab. It's based at TMU, and it has data that shows changes over time. We must be using data and evidence to inform the conversation. I would say we need to lead into debate. I don't think, there we go. The research suggests that more, just donating or offering more facts is not the solution, and some of that's come up. It's really helping people understand the process of science, and the uncertainty is really important. I teach a fourth-year course in critical thinking in biomedical sciences, and even science students don't understand the difference between argument as a as a way to win something, and argument as a debate. So leaning into the debate and explaining with transparency how the process of science or how the process of gathering information to build a consensus, and then asking people not do you believe in the science, but do you accept the weight of the body of evidence in support of a particular explanation for a set of observations. That can be really helpful in helping people understand, even science students, understand how we get to this body of facts that we're so keen to bestow on everyone. Rather, that's where the facts come from, but how do we get there? And if we spent more time explaining how we get there, including the uncertainty and why we change our minds sometimes because the consensus changes, that I think the research tells us would be very helpful. Go to the research.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. I'm really curious to hear about the data that you've come across about uncertainty, but I'll come back to you in a bit. And I want to go to Barbara. I saw you had your, go ahead.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more that uncertainty, communicating uncertainty is really essential for building up trust. And critical thinking should also be a big goal of science communication. I think we must acknowledge the fact that many people won't be able to read facts or scientific results. So this is what science communication is all about, like translating your knowledge into a knowledge that is accessible for an average person. Right, so I couldn't agree more on that, and I also think that critical thinking is like a basis for trust. It's a result of critical thinking, to trust an institution in a situation where we don't know for sure. So this should be really at the center of it all, in my opinion.
To wit, the next question I want to ask is specifically tied to that. Oh, sorry, Mario, did you want to jump in?
All good, all good. I mean, this is a good conversation, so it's great. And I want to endorse, but also challenge some of the points that were raised, because we hear too much of this kind of facts don't matter. They actually matter a lot, but we are in an environment where we don't get diversity of facts to make our minds up. And there's some recent adversarial research of different schools in psychology saying, on the one hand, it's all motivated reasoning. People don't believe stuff that that goes counter to their deep beliefs. And there's another group saying, oh, well, facts still do matter. And there's this famous paper on debunk bot. I don't know, probably you heard of this. Some researchers who looked at the ability of ChatGPT to change people's minds on conspiracy theories. Because the original thought was people who believe in conspiracy theories, they're really too far out. We will not ever reach them. Information doesn't matter. They're in their own worlds. We mentioned this there, the flat earthers, things like this. And they designed an extremely simple interaction with ChatGPT. And they told it, really give it only facts. Only respond with facts. Don't go with persuasion techniques and so on. And we see a durable, over months afterwards, shift in beliefs in conspiracy theories of those who engaged with this by 25%, which is amazingly huge.
Yeah, that's big.
And this is just to say, even though some of the researchers had the hypothesis, no, they're all motivated to not believe in it, we still see that the facts do matter. People want to know more. But then the question is, do they receive ever the information that does counteract them? And there's the thing where we have to act. And I think to give a framework for that, how we think about this is, on the one hand, of course, we have interventions on the individual level. How can we nudge individual people to do better literacy interventions? But there's also system level interventions that we need to do. We need to do policies that change our information environment. Because otherwise, we are all exposed to something that makes it really difficult for us to combat this on a daily basis.
I'm painfully aware that we don't have nearly enough time to go through all of the questions that I'd love to and to hear from all the perspectives. So I'm going to squeeze in one more question for sure, and if we can, we'll get to. I have noticed that increasingly I have spent more and more time, as I watch, science YouTube content, I've had to spend more and more time thinking critically about the content that I'm watching and trying to fact check it, and that's my job, so I've got the time to do that. Most people don't have the time for that, and it's getting harder and harder to do that because obviously with the proliferation of AI, more and more content is more and more suspect. And so I guess the question is, should we as science communicators be encouraging people to practice more critical thinking? Like, are we focusing on critical thinking as the outcome or trust in institutions as the outcome? Because as critical thinking takes up more and more time, at some point people are just going to have to default to deciding who they're going to trust, or maybe not. So the question is, should we as science communicators focus more on building critical thinking skills or building trust in institutions? How many people say critical thinking? Make some noise, hands up. Yeah, okay. And how many people say trust in institutions that are worthy of trust? Okay, a slightly smaller majority. All right. Well, so obviously this is, I'm framing this as a dichotomy. It is not one, but I'm going to frame it as one anyways. You can't do both in this one because it's more fun. It's funnier. And it's going to force us to think creatively about it. So I'd love to start with the minority perspectives, why we should focus on institutions, if anybody wants to chime in. And as the mic is traveling there, I'll ask our panelists here. I think I'll come to you, Nicholas, maybe on this one, and maybe Marianne as well. Oh, yeah, so you can throw it along. But Marianne, do you want to start us off on this one? It's tricky.
Sure. I wasn't going to, okay. We've been thinking about this a lot over the last few days in conversations at this kind of G7 Science Communication Working Group, because we've waffled between scenarios that are long-term versus you're in a crisis moment. And going back to the policy conversation, before a crisis, we do need to build up this kind of ecosystem responsibility, like responsibility. The ability to respond. Whereas, let's just say you have an institution that is giving information that the public needs to react, and you want them to have that to make the best informed decisions. If you haven't spent the time connecting that entity, that authority institution, with organizations that the public does trust, it's really hard in a time of crisis to suddenly have that trust. And the way, when you're not in a crisis, if you're just thinking about how do people get information, they're navigating information, they're getting information from everywhere. And you want to be like, yeah, but my information's right. They should come to me. They're looking at information from everywhere, and they're looking at multiple sources to repeat something for it to be credible. And I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm just talking about anyone in this room. How do you, if you're looking for something, a health thing, you're looking to see if it's true, you're probably going to multiple sources, and you're looking for a body of evidence. Is it a body of evidence from one source? You're probably at maybe it's your friend and family, maybe it's something you've seen in the news, maybe it's on social media. And so when we're thinking about really important information that we want to be trusted, you better have built up a network that information can be on multiple places. And you do that through an ecosystem mindset, so that those relationships between these kind of communication bodies are in place.
You very cleverly sidestepped the dichotomy I've set up, where you're practicing critical thinking and institutional trust at the same time. Well done, Marianne. Were there other hands in the audience about this one, or if no? Okay, go ahead. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Maggie. So my experience, well, this is kind of going to be relevant to every single question you've asked, but in my experience as a queer non-binary person who is dating a trans person, all of my friends are queer and trans. The only time I interact with straight cis people is at work or online. And when I go online, I want people to trust our institutions. But right now, if I go online and I say my experience as a non-binary person is that when people use my chosen pronouns, I feel safe, which the science supports. Like there's science that says that the rate of regret for gender-affirming surgeries is like less than 3%. But we don't have people who believe that, because there are, even in Canada, institutions that perpetuate anti-trans ideology and who are trying to legislate it into existence right now in Canada. So what do we do when our institutions are actually the ones perpetuating the misinformation?
Yep, this is a very prescient question. Very prescient question. So I'm going to communicate uncertainty. I don't know. I'm just curious to hear what maybe Nick might have to say.
I want to let you all know the clock just hit 0. I don't know what that means. It was, a little bit scary.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, Nick.
Shall I do a quick answer anyway?
A quick answer anyway? A quick answer
Okay.
anyway? They can't stop us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go with the minority view to keep it spicy. Obviously, both are important, but so why favor institutions? I think, so I used to be an academic, now I'm in government. I feel like we all represent one institution or another here, academia, government, not-for-profit, civil society. I think that while critical thinking is clearly important, I think there's a risk and a trap that many of us fall into, and it's related to the social media debate, and it's at casting the blame outward. It's like social media is the problem, and the people are missing something. They don't have enough critical thinking. Right. And if they did, and if they read more of my papers, then we'd all be great. And I think governments, scientists, academics, everyone, it's like, yeah, let's deal with the problems in the world for sure, but I think we all have to do like the tough look inward. Yep. And ask, are we performing, are we doing science, are we communicating science in the most optimal, transparent, trust-earning way or not? And I would bet none of us are doing as good as we possibly could be doing. So I think institutions need to do that look inward and design for trust and trustworthiness. And the people will do what they do.
That is a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much, too. Can we give a round to our panel for their participation? Your insights have been invaluable to them. We really appreciate it. And then give a round to yourselves for being such an outstanding audience as well. We really value your insights a lot. Thank you so much.